な皆さん、こんにちは。林です。今日は、絵本作家のメラニーさんに来ていただいて、お話をしたいと思ってます。Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Takeshi.
How are you
So
doing?
nice to be here on your show.
No, thank
I'm
you.
great.
Yeah, thank you for consenting to appear on my program, although it's very early there, early in the morning. Are you an early bird?
Early here and late there. I know it's tough to find a good time to talk, but I have to get up early anyway, get my daughter to school. So it's it works out well.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I'm kind of night owl, so it's okay.
Yeah, good.
All right. So can you first start introducing yourself very briefly?
Sure. Yes, I want to say hello to all Takeshi students, and thanks for coming to watch. I'm Melanie Ellsworth, and I'm a writer. I write for children. So I have a couple of picture books that just came out and got published. Before that, I was a teacher. I worked as an ESL teacher, English as a second language. And I also have worked as a literacy specialist. And so that's helping students learn to understand the material that they're reading a little bit better. So using different kinds of strategies for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, okay, thank you. So now you're attracting attention as an up-and-coming author of children's books. And you have published 2 books so far, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have a copy here, one of them.
Yep, that's my first book that came out.
Right. And the other one, I'm still waiting for it to arrive. So, so we're going to talk about your books in our next interview.
Yep.
And as you said in your self-introduction, you were an English teacher. You were teaching English in Boston. What's the name of the institution that you worked for?
So I taught at the Asian American Civic Association, and we usually just called it AACA. And that was located in Chinatown in Boston. And I worked as an English as a second language teacher there. And we had students from all over the world. They were immigrants who usually had recently come to the US. And most of them were from China, but we also had students from Afghanistan, El Salvador, Haiti, and quite a few out Korea, and also a number of other countries too. So our classes would be usually maybe 12 to 15 students in a class. And we would work on conversational English and also English getting ready to work. So workplace English. And most of the work I did was teaching students to get ready for college. So a lot of our students wanted to go to community college in the US. And so we had to practice like how to write an academic essay, American style, and that kind of thing, and sort of cultural expectations, what to expect when they went to an American college, how to work with the teachers and professors, and that sort of thing. So my students were usually intermediate English speakers or a little bit above that.
So most of your students were rather young students, as you said?
Well, it was interesting. I had a big age range. So I had anywhere from like 18-year-old students all the way up to 70 something. So, you know, grandmas and grandpas were also in my class as well. And for some of those people, it wasn't necessarily that they were going to go to college, but they wanted to improve their English to communicate with their grandchildren or just to live, you know, in the country more comfortably. So there was a wide age range, but it skewed a little bit on the younger side.
But okay, so the classes were divided like according to their purposes or their levels?
I think it was mostly level. So there was a workplace readiness program that was separate from the program I taught. So I would always put a little bit of work readiness into my program just because a lot of my students had jobs, and so they were working, but they were also trying to go to college soon. So we would do a little bit of both, but there was also a separate program that was just for training people who wanted to go into work. So I did a little bit of everything, but I would say my focus was mostly teaching students about getting ready for college, assuming that a lot of them wanted to go. But we did conversational English and English for, how to use English when you go shopping, how to use it in a restaurant, that kind of thing too.
Did you use textbooks or original teaching materials? Or?
A little bit of both, but I'd say mostly original teaching material based on what the students needed. But we had some books that we had as well, that a lot of different books actually, which we made photocopies from and kind of combined to make our own curriculum for the students.
And roughly how many students were there in one class?
Probably somewhere between about 12 and maybe 12 and 15, sometimes a little bit bigger than that. But so fairly small classes. And some of the students wanted to practice English, just one-on-one. So we would get tutors who were volunteers. They weren't paid, and they would come in and volunteer to just sit with a student, any student who wanted, for an hour or two a week. So that was a way they could practice their conversational English, because it's tough if you're in a class of 12 or 15 students to get a lot of conversation practice. So.
I see. So I have to ask you from the very beginning that, we went to the same high school. I was there as an exchange student, so I was there only for a year. But after graduating from Lincoln Sudbury High School in the state of Massachusetts, you went to college to major in that sort of a field, like teaching English?
I majored in comparative literature. So it was the study of literature from different countries. So it wasn't really a teaching focus, but it was an English focus. And then I worked in educational software for a while. We were developing educational math programs for students. And I really wanted to teach, but that happened a little bit later. So let's see, it was after I finished college, I went to a program called AmeriCorps, which is a little bit like a Peace Corps program, but it's inside the US. So I did that for a year. And then after that, I worked for a while with educational software publishing. And then I joined a program called Youth International. And that program we traveled to Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, Youth International, right?
Yes, and that was the first time that I had a chance to teach a little bit of ESL. So we were in northern India for a little while, and we helped out with a English program there. So for me, that was a sort of eye-opening experience. I thought I want to do that at some point when I get home. And so eventually I think that was 1997. So it wasn't until 2002, I finally went to get my master's of language and literacy. And then I went to work for AACA after that. So yeah.
So at postgraduate course, you majored in, it's not a name of the major like ESOL that we were talking about before we started this interview.
No, that the master's was called a Master's of Education in Language and Literacy. But within that master's program, I focused a little bit on the needs of adults rather than children. So adults who might be learning English as a second language, or adults who were struggling with reading skills. So that was the focus of my program. I chose to focus on adults and adult needs. And then after I had that master's, I was living in Boston, and that's when I decided to take a job at AACA because I thought it fit well with my master's program, and I had been wanting to teach English for a long time. So I finally finally took the plunge. Yeah. So I taught at AACA from 2002 to 2007.
And as you said, it's located in Chinatown, Boston, but students come from not only from China, but from almost all over the world, as you said.
Yes. Yes.
So you have a lot of opportunities to see international students from many different countries.
Yes, and it was nice for the students too to meet students from other countries as well.
Oh yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have a field of study called TESOL, also teaching English to speakers of other languages, which is kind of like a sought after field of study, especially among those who are hoping to become English teachers. And, you know, so that's also part of your program when you were studying at a postgraduate course.
It was included in my program. There were some classes that dealt with ESL, but it was a little, I guess, that you can get a certificate separately too for that kind of program as well. So my program maybe was a little broader, and I would say that yes, my studies included some of that teaching methodology as well, but it also expanded to people who grew up in the US but maybe were struggling readers as well. So that's a big field in our country too, is the students who for whatever reason have never learned to read that well. It can be dyslexia or many other reasons, and so those are students also who you work with as a language and literacy specialist.
I see. So when you were teaching English at that institution, what were some of the difficulties that you have in teaching, and also interesting aspects also in teaching?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the hardest things as a teacher was a lot of students would come from their countries with high educational backgrounds. We even had one student who was a doctor in China, and he was very frustrated because he wanted to be a doctor in America too, but there were so many hurdles to overcome. First, the language barrier. So he wanted to learn English as fast as possible, and it's not a very quick process, so it takes a lot of patience and a lot of time. And he also needed extra certifications to become a doctor again here. So there were so many things he had to do in order to get back to that same level, that same position that he had in China. So I think that was one of the hard things to watch, was students with a really high level of education who were really struggling to to be successful here in the US. And usually it was mostly a language barrier. So it took time for them. The other thing that I found hard was that some students were in jobs where they were not treated that well by their employers because they were attached to these visas. So they had work visas, and they didn't feel like they could say anything bad about their boss. If the boss didn't pay them on time, or or the boss didn't treat them well, they felt like they had to keep quiet, so they didn't get in trouble, so they keep their job and their visa. So that was hard. It was hard to watch students in those situations. One of the things AACA would do was bring lawyers in to talk to the students sometimes about their rights. Here's your workplace rights, and if you're renting an apartment, here are your rights. In this country that you can speak out. But those were, I think, some of the outside forces sort of working against the students were hard for us to see. You know, we would try to help them through, but it was frustrating and a little discouraging. Let's see, trying to think of the fun parts were
yes.
Taking students on field trips, introducing them to Boston, like the Freedom Trail in Boston.
Oh, yes.
Paul Revere's house, the Bunker Hill Monument. And we would take some trips by boat as well to see the city. And let's see what else. I'm trying to think what they really liked. They really liked going to the State House in Boston.
Oh, yes.
And just realizing that you can actually go and talk to your representative there. And if you have a complaint or you want to, you know, you can send an email or write a letter or actually talk to somebody, and somebody will listen, hopefully. But so I think students enjoyed the freedom of, like, you can actually walk into your government building and you know, and talk about an issue that's bothering you. So that was one of the great things I saw. The other things we did that we really enjoyed were watching movies and listening to music together, and trying to understand the words in the song, and then using that music to write about their own memories of their home culture, and connecting that with American culture in some way. So music was really powerful connecting tool, I think, to bridge the cultures.
You brought those music to class.
Yes, yeah. So sometimes what I would do was I would have a song, like Cheryl Wheeler has a great song. It's called When Fall Comes to New England. And I would take the song and then take a few words out of the song and give the students the song lyrics, but with a few missing words. And they would try to listen for the words that were missing from the text and write them in. It was a listening exercise, but it was also teaching about the seasons in the US and in New England. And then we would talk about the seasons back where they came from. What kind of seasons did they have? And they would usually write about something about their hometown and their seasons. And it would bring back a lot of memories and strong emotions. And I think that helped their writing to be able to put emotion on the page. So those were fun experiences.
Yeah. Okay. So you were, or you are also a literacy specialist. Do you work as a literacy specialist now?
I don't work now as a literacy specialist. I worked from 2008 to 2012 as a literacy specialist. And so the reason I left AACA was because we moved from Boston to Maine. So I loved that job, but I had to leave it, unfortunately, with the move to a different state. So then when I got to Maine, I started working as a literacy specialist. And that's very different. So I was working with high school students, and I was working at a technical center. It was called Waldo County Technical Center. And I don't know if you have this in Japan, but it's more of a like a vocational training college. So not like, it's like a high school that prepares students for jobs, like working with cars, like automotive jobs, or graphic design jobs, or so some of those students were not going to college. Some of them were, but some of them just wanted to finish high school and go right to work.
So it's basically for American students rather than international students.
Yes, yeah, because where I live now, the population is mostly, we don't have a lot of international students in our area. So these students were getting ready to do building construction jobs or graphic design jobs or automotive jobs. And so some of them were struggling readers. So even though they were high school students, they had a lot of times lower levels of reading skill. Not all of them, it was all different. But so my job as a literacy specialist was to go to each classroom and help the teachers make it easier for their students to understand the material they were reading. And sometimes the material is very technical, like if you're reading a very like boring article about electrical engineering and it's very detailed and it's maybe really difficult to understand. So I would talk about pre-reading strategies that they could do to make the material easier for students, guide them through the reading, and what they could do after they finish the reading that would help their students understand the main idea, or look for detail in the story or the reading. So it was different, definitely a very different kind of work. It was fun. It was more about working with teachers than working with students at that point. So it was me teaching the teachers how to help their students with understand really difficult material.
So a literacy specialist is someone who helps students how to read and also who helps teachers of English.
Yes, and it could be a teacher of any subject too. So in my case, they were teachers, could be a teacher teaching electrical engineering or a teacher teaching computer science. And so my job as a literacy specialist was to give them ways to help their students understand the material that they were reading in class. But some literacy specialists work with younger kids, so maybe kindergartners, where you're really teaching them how to read, like you're teaching them alphabet and you're teaching them, pronunciation and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that would be sort of the lower level, the younger readers.
Yeah, I think reading is of paramount importance in any language. But, especially in Japan, the situation is a bit or very different from that of yours. What I mean by this is like as an English teacher myself, I teach English to Japanese students, but they don't really have that many opportunities to use the language because we really don't have to use English in our daily lives. Unless you have a lot of foreign friends with whom you can converse in English, it's very hard to keep up your English language or language skill. But still reading, if you keep reading, I think that helps you, keep up your language and enlarging your vocabulary and things of that sort. But, at the institution that you worked for, the students you taught were always ready to use the language even if they are out of class, right? So that kind of difference you see.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. They have to practice it on a regular basis. Some of them did work in restaurants, like Chinese restaurants, for example, and maybe with their coworkers, they might have been speaking more Cantonese or Mandarin and not as much English. And sometimes at home, they would just be speaking their home language. But you're right, every day on the street or going shopping, or for some of them going to college, they would have to be using English on a regular basis. So that was helpful. I think sometimes, like you said, you can do a lot of reading in a different language, and that can help. Like I sometimes still read in Spanish, but I find that my reading skills and my listening skills are much better than my speaking skills for Spanish. So even though I lived in, I did what you did, but you did it in high school and I did it in college. I I was an exchange student in college. I spent a year abroad in Costa Rica.
Oh, you
And,
are? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my Spanish got better that year. I had to use it all the time. But then I found when I came home, I was reading in Spanish a little bit, but I wasn't speaking in Spanish very much. So so now my speaking ability is much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And my listening ability is pretty good, but my speaking is not so good. That's always the challenge, I think, with the second language, if you're not surrounded by native speakers, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally understand what you are saying, because I am an English teacher, but I myself don't really have that many opportunities to use English, although I try to read a lot. In that way, I'm trying to keep up my English, but still, I want to have, actually many opportunities to use English as a way of output activity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's nice that you reached out to me, because now you're able to keep up practicing English, right? And I'm sure you do with other people too.
Right. Yeah. So I'm getting used to my English is coming back now. Yeah. But so it was rather easy for you to see your students' improvement, because they, had to use it, as soon as they learned it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it was good to see that. It's always, I think language learning is always a little bit slow though. So a lot of students feel a little bit frustrated that they're not getting it faster. But usually when the students started going to community college and they were in class most of the day, all day, they would start picking up really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the students who got a job where they were speaking English at their jobs usually also started to improve very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Those things helped.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that some people are really good at learning a foreign language and others are not? Do you think their talent, or some people are gifted in learning foreign language, would you say? Or people are equal in language acquisition?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. It does seem like there are a few people out there who have like a really good ear for the sound of a language or different sounds. And I think those people tend to be the ones who can speak 3, 4, 5 languages. And so maybe they find it's a little easier to pick up languages after a while. But I think for most people, it's probably just about practicing a lot. So having the opportunity to go and use it every day for most of the day. Otherwise, it's a challenge for most people if you only use it an hour a day, or just a little bit here, a little bit there. It's tough.
Yeah, like practice makes perfect after all. And it's just a matter of how much you use the language.
Yeah. I think so. How about for you? I didn't ask you how many languages you speak. Do you speak more than 2?
Well, I speak Japanese, obviously, and English to a degree. And then I learned Spanish also. I took Spanish while I was in Lincoln Sudbury, but I didn't do it very well. And at college, I also took Spanish for 2 years. But as I said earlier, well, as far as Spanish is concerned, I never used it. I mean, I never spoke Spanish to anybody. So I didn't really make any progress. I mean, I almost forgot everything I learned while I was at college. So yeah, English, I'm still struggling with the language of English, but
well, I know you seem like a very advanced English speaker to me. My Spanish is not even close. I wish it were, but it's not. So
so you don't have an opportunity to use Spanish?
Not so much where I am. If I were in the city in Portland, Maine, maybe I could use it a little bit more, I think. But I'm in a very small, rural kind of country type location. And so there are not a lot of speakers of anything but English here. If I went to northern Maine, I could learn French, maybe because the people in northern Maine are on the Canadian border. So Quebec is there. So a lot of those speakers are English and French speakers. But my French is very, very limited.
Yeah, I think so. Now you're in Maine. What's the name of the town in the state of Maine?
I'm in Warren, Maine. And it's near Camden. More people know about Camden and Rockland usually because those are the big tourist towns. So in the summer, those are the towns where the tourists will come and take boats out or go to the ocean and like a seaside town.
Yeah, I think I have been to Maine once while I was in Massachusetts as an exchange student, but that was like more than 30 years ago, and I don't really remember very well. But so it's a bit far from Boston, would you say?
It's about 4 hours or so, 3.5 hours, north of Boston.
But you were born and brought up in Sudbury, Massachusetts?
I grew up mostly in Sudbury, Massachusetts. I was born in Oakland, California, but I stayed there till I was 2 years old, so I don't remember anything about that. So basically, I think of New England as my home. So I haven't stayed in New England the whole time, but for much of my life, I've been in New England, either Massachusetts or Maine.
Yeah, New England, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But do you miss Boston?
I do sometimes miss Boston. Yeah, I think the thing I miss the most is the diversity of people. People from everywhere, people from all over the world. And Maine is a lot smaller and not so much diversity. And also I miss in Boston, I miss the food. Food, you could get food from anywhere. So you could, when I worked in Chinatown, we had really delicious dim sum. And so there's a lot of foods that I miss that I can't get in Maine. I can get them if I went to Portland, Maine. That's about 2 hours south of where I live now. There are a lot of
Maine, yeah.
But my town doesn't have a lot.
Oh, I see. Do you have a Chinatown also in the state of Maine?
I think in Portland, Maine, in the big city. I think so, yeah. But but I'm about 2 hours away from the big city, so we don't have we don't have a lot of food choices. We have some Chinese restaurants, and if we go an hour south, we can find an Indian restaurant. But yeah, so we lack we lack diverse restaurants.
I see. So you're living a rather quiet life there?
Yes, it's more like the countryside. We have a lot of access to nature. So my family likes to hike. So we can go hiking in the mountains, or we can go canoeing on the river. But it's more of a farm life for sure.
And maybe I'm sure you can focus on your work there also, writing.
Yes. Yeah. We have an old barn attached to our house, and I have an office up in the barn, so I can work up there, and I have a nice view, and it's quiet, easy to concentrate. Yeah.
And as I said earlier, you published 2 books, but you're going to have another new one to publish? Are you working on?
I hope so. We're working on a contract right now with another publisher, so we'll see. And I have an agent who submits my books to publishers for me, so she is submitting a number of my other books. So hopefully we'll have some more announcements soon.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
And this one is one of your books, and you are writing the stories, right? Not pictures.
Yes, I just do the story. Yeah. And then when the publisher accepts the story, the publisher chooses the illustrator for the story. So I actually I have my so this one Morena Forza is the illustrator, and I didn't know her before, but the publisher knew her and they chose her. They said to me, here's Morena Forza's website. Do you want to go see her art? Tell us if you think it's good. And I said, yeah, she looks great. She would be a good match for the book. So then she worked on the book without my help. So we didn't talk at all. It was,
I see. Oh.
Yeah, and that's how it usually works. It's just the artist works with the text from the author, but there's no communication back and forth.
Oh, I see.
I finally had a chance to meet her because we did a Zoom event together. So finally I met her, but it was after the book was finished and published already. And the same thing is true. This is my next book, which I think you're getting later.
Yes.
Is illustrated by John Herzog. And I've never met him either.
Oh, I see.
So I don't know him, but the publisher said, we like his style. We think his style art will match your style text. So they chose him.
Do you think you will have a chance to see him sometime?
Yes, I'm going to see him on May 5th because I'm doing an event with a bookstore. We're going to do it on Zoom, and we're going to talk about how we wrote the book and how he illustrated the book as well.
Where is it? Where will be
the bookstore is in Portland, Maine, and so I won't go there, but I'll do it on Zoom, and then he'll zoom in as well he's in Florida. So we'll all meet on Zoom, and then the audience can join in. Anybody's welcome to sign up and watch.
Oh, I see. Okay, so today we mainly talked about your career as an English teacher and the institution that you worked for. And I asked you a lot of questions regarding that aspect of your career. But next up, I'm super excited about, your books, talking about your books, maybe in our next session.
That would be lovely, yes.
And then maybe we can also talk about picture books in general. That's also one of my interests as well.
Yeah, I think picture books can teach us a lot about so many different things. When you think about kindness or introducing kids to other cultures, or that sort. In fact, just yesterday I got in the mail, I got this book called The Star Festival. And I didn't write this book. This is by Moni Ritchie Hadley and Mizuho Fujisawa.
Oh, okay.
I hopefully saying this correctly, but so it's introducing American kids to a Japanese
Star Festival
tradition. Yeah, so I thought that was really, I love books like this because then kids in the US can understand a little bit about something that's happening in another culture.
Yes, culture, history, customs, and how foreign people live and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we can talk about those kind of things in our next interview. And yes. And now, which brings us to the end of the program for today. And well, thank you very much. I'm sure it's early in the morning, and you are very busy with your children, going to school, taking your children to school and all that. But thank you very much for consenting to appear on this program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Takeshi. I really enjoyed the chance.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to talking about your books in our next opportunity.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Good.
Okay. Thank
All
you,
right.
Melanie.
Yeah.
Thank you.